Oh, buenos dias. Hello to all of you. Good morning. Again, this is a beautiful Sabbath in the United States of America, in the state of Texas. We are enjoying a little spring rain, and it is a perfect time to have the kingdom of heaven and its wisdom and its words of inspiration and empowerment rain down upon us and to us to absorb and begin to flow in that beautiful, beautiful living water of His Word. Today is the day we have a chance, we get the opportunity to dig into a certain subdivision of the Torah called Yitro. It begins in chapter 18 of the book of Exodus, and it will continue all the way through chapter 20, I believe it's verse 23, the last verse of that chapter. And this is such a dynamic section of the Torah. It's one that everybody knows. This is the time of the actual giving of the Torah, called Matan Torah in Hebrew, the bringing us to Mount Sinai. We arrive at Mount Sinai. He begins to speak over us who He sees us to be, He being the creator of the heavens and the earth, our God. And He begins to speak over us who He sees us to be and how He desires to remold and remake us over until we have the impact in the world He designed us to. And then He gives us His outline of how to become those three things. He will give us 10 specific outline portions. They're often called the 10 Commandments. That's a misnomer to this understanding, at least from the modern English, is what that might mean. These are 10 outline phraseologies that guide us and direct us toward the threefold mission, and we'll have a chance to talk about all those things today. I want to tell you in advance that what we're doing today is what is called a Shabbat Drash. What I'm doing is to begin to lay out some things that are Sabbath-worthy discussions. There are so many things we could talk about in this parsha, as in all parshas. And so for those of you, and I know there will be those, who wish to go deeper and want to see the more of the minute details and the day-by-day and the moment-by-moment transitions that aren't covered by this overall Shabbat Drash that tries to cover several chapters in a few moments. If you want to go deeper, then I do encourage you to go to our website, the biblicallifestylecenter.org. Biblicallifestylecenter.org. It's a little bit long, but you type it all together. Biblicallifestylecenter.org. And there's a page on that website called The Rabbi's Son. Click on that, and then you have different options. One of the things that you have there is an archives of archive studies, and that is all daily studies in detail, 15 to 20 pages a piece. If you want some detail, you can find it there. So I just encourage you, if you haven't checked out the website lately, go ahead back to it and check it out and get those archives. And you can get more details when you're ready to dig in and get the deeper things. But right now we're trying to be caught up in the revelation stream, the beauty and the majesty of what He wants to awaken in our spirits this Sabbath day. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the day the Holy One has made to inspire and empower us and to give us guidance and direction and send us on the counsel of the godly while we have spent so much time walking in the counsel of the ungodly. Well, this week I call this Parsha the fifth installment of the Great Nation Building Chronicles. We have been talking since the book of Exodus began about the fact that the Holy One is doing something amazing in the earth. He is building the great nation that He promised to bring forth from Abraham's seed. Back in Genesis 12 and then again 15, 17, 22, He kept talking about how He would make a great nation of the seed of Abraham. Well, that's what He's doing. The Chronicles have begun with Exodus 1, and they're continuing. This is ongoing. We're at a critical stage, but we're not at the end of this great nation building process. We're at a pivotal point of it, and that is the Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, the establishment of the Sinaitic covenant, at least its inauguration. We're going to see it build and build and build over the course of the next 40 weeks, basically. So, installment number 5 of the Great Nation Building Chronicles is our portion today. We know at this point from the first 4 installments of this great set of chronicles. What the Holy One has done for us. What, in fact, he is still doing daily for us. We've experienced manna from heaven. We've experienced water from a rock. We've experienced protection from adversaries. We've experienced guidance and direction. We've learned how to follow him and trust him. We've learned these things. We know what he has done for us and what he is doing for us. But we haven't found out yet what he wants from us, what he sees in us, and what he is doing in us. That is what is the critical factor that will make this a pivotal parsha. He's going to tell us in no uncertain terms 3 things that he defines as our identity, how he sees us and why he's doing what he's doing for us. He has a plan. He has a purpose. So the 3 things, and he's going to give us 10 outline ways, 10 channels to channel our energy and our passion and our focus and our idealization and ideation to be able to get towards those 3 main goals. So as a subdivision or a subheading from a standpoint of a Shabbat drash, I say to you, this is the parsha, this is the week, this is the day, this is the drash of covenant calling, of covenant identity, and of essential mission focus. Welcome, beloved. This is going to be such an inspiration to you. This is the day that the Holy One has chosen for us to do and discuss these things. The Holy One wants us, as we enter into this new phase of understanding what it is he wants from us, he wants us to understand, first of all, that he is our essential, eternal, unshakable foundation. We are not loose cords. The name of the parsha is Yitro. It means a loose binding or a cord that's not tied to anything. We're not that. That is Yitro. That is the person, that is the ways of so many people in the world that have a wisdom of their own, but they're not tied to the eternal, unshakable, essential foundation. Well, may it be that we are always found to be in that. There's a famous saying that comes basically in every synagogue. You see it on the ark. And it says, Da lifnei mi ata omed. Da lifnei mi ata amed. Know in whose presence, before whose gaze you stand. Do you know who we're attached to? Who we're extensions of. We are not independent actors trying to be moral. We're not independent actors trying to be just and right. We are connected, and we are fingers and toes and arms and legs connected to a brain, a brilliant one, that is actually moving and pulsing energy through us. Da lifnei mi ata omed. Know, beloved, in whose presence, before whose gaze, according to his impulses, you stand and live. In this week, he's going to give us a more of a connection as to what he is doing for us and who he is to us. Exodus 19:4, and part of the early Sinaitic discussions at Sinai, he's going to say, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians. Have you? And you have seen how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Oh, brought you to myself. I bore you on eagle's wings out of the Egyptian melee, and I brought you not just out of the Egyptians, but to myself, he says. This is the connection, the essential, eternal, unshakable foundation. This is where we come to. And if we don't come to that, getting a bunch of information or a bunch of knowledge or a bunch of doctrine will not matter. We must be connected to the essential, eternal, unshakable foundation, which is the one before whom we stand and from whom we draw all our energies. The book of Acts, it said, and in him we live and move and have our being. This is what he is to us. The next portion that he's going to talk to us about when he begins to introduce the 10 channels of the 10 outline methodologies of accomplishing our threefold goal, which we'll talk about in a moment. When he gets to that point, he begins it by saying this, I am, this is him speaking, I am the Holy One, your God, who did 2 things, brought you forth out Yatsad, you made you cause to become a germinated seed and sprout out of the earth, the dirt of Mitzrayim. You begin to sprout like a tree out of the dirt of Mitzrayim. And from Bet Avadim, the house of servitude. Oh, you began to learn what servanthood is like in the hardest possible way. But you will learn how servanthood comes in the kingdom of heaven. Well, that's where we started. That's where we need to start. It is Holy Nation counterculture building time. And these are the B'nai Israel Chronicles. Our challenge this week, if you will accept it, is to decide if we will do the will and follow the ways of the one who created and sustains us and brought us to himself, or we will instead default to the dictates of our own hearts, our flesh instincts, our pseudo-intellect, the vain imaginations of our fellow men, and their who knows what agendas. How will we approach life? Will we do the will and will we follow the ways of the one who created, sustains us, and brought him to himself? Or will we default to the dictates of our own hearts and the counsel and the vain imaginations of our fellow fallen men with who knows what agendas they may have? It all starts with who our ears and our lives and our minds belong to, and whose words we will and whose words we will not. Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Come back, beloved. Come back to your foundation. Come back to the rock from which you were hewn. Come back to the one who has called you and set you apart after creating you and designing you for such a time as this. Shema Yisrael. Shema his voice. Shema our treasure and cherish his covenant and his instructions and build everything he says to build. Asa it. Do it. Make it. Cause it to take shape in this world. These are the secrets of our life. Well, we have come to this parsha, and it is an amazing one. It is the parsha when the Sinaitic covenant is inaugurated. That may not mean much to you unless you understand this is a part of a grand plan. This is merely a phase, which we need to understand, in the Holy One's grand plan for the redemption of mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline, household by household, individual by individual, as many as will come. A plan to redeem all those and for the restoration of creation in its natural state and its unnatural state, restoration of creation to its intended state of beauty, of fruitfulness, and shalom like unto the Garden of Eden, the garden of our God. That's what this parsha is. It starts with three general assignments. Well, we're going to have an encounter with a fellow named that's got a loose binding, Yitro, not connected to anything, but has a lot of important, exciting things to say that attract a lot of attention. He's the voice of another. It all starts with that, but then it goes when we finally get over that and our infatuation with the things of the voice of the ungodly and organization and structure and form over substance. When we get over that and our obsession with numerology and numbers and on showy, flashy sacraments, when we get over all that, he's going to get us to the substance of this parsha. He's going to give us three general assignments, three things he sees us as being in the world, doing for the world and for him. And then he's going to give us the 10 words of course definition, the definition of our course, the outlay of where we're going, and 10 words of prophetic empowerment that will get us there, that will provide the impetus and the energy and the inspiration to get us where we're going. Oh, there are many details and enactment protocols yet to come. But this is out of which it all starts. If we don't connect to this, we will not be able to make any sense of why he gives us specific instructions, covenant, commandments, judgments, witnesses. You won't know why he does all the things. These protocols he's going to give us, they're all connected to these three general assignments and the 10 outline words of course definition and prophetic empowerment. So, if you understand what happened at Sinai, what's going to happen at Sinai in this week's Parsha, it's a beautiful thing. With the Creator of the universe is going to speak in the hearing of every man, woman, and child, both Bnei Israel and the mixed multitude of all the nations and the bloodlines that came out of Egypt. It is a big picture of what's going to happen in the latter days, but it is a beginning point. It is the seed point of all the kingdom of heaven coming to earth. So, you understand this, it's going to be necessary that we grasp that this is all something that's done in context. This didn't just happen independent. That's why you don't just quote the 10 words or 10 commandments, as people want to call them, out of their context. This is based upon a plan and a protocol that's in place in a context of a sequence of events. A carefully choreographed script is unfolding. And this is part of it. And this is all pursuant to that grand plan we talked about for redemption of mankind as a species and for restoration of creation to intended state. This is not merely about how to live a moral life or to and do social justice or have good social interactions. This is about redemption for the world, making tikkun for creation and for the fall and for the things that this is more than just about some idea of morality, and this is good moral behavior. These 10 words that he's going to give us are the picture of how the world gets healed, how the world gets restored, how people get redeemed. So, from our picking up into context as we're talking about, last week we came through the Sea of Reeds and we went to places like Mara and Elim, and we were in what I call the first wilderness, and this is going to be just a brief rehashing of that fast. I said, one thing that we got to is, and we'll talk more about it, he taught us something at Mara, not just that he can make everything that is bitter to us or unpleasant to us sweet. In other words, we're not locked in the current state. What is happening seems always so real and so meaningful and so much the main thing to think about. But he's teaching us at Mara that it's where he's taking us and what he's doing and what he can make of the present situation. That is to be our focus, not upon how bad we think it presently is, how bitter the waters are. Oh, we were to focus on how he wants to make whatever's bitter sweet. We want to see beyond. He taught us at Mara to not be obsessed by the now, but to consider and work toward the then. This week, he's going to build upon that. He's going to give us a threefold erusin proposal. Erusin means betrothal. It's the form in the Hebrew culture, in the Hebrew language, of how a young man and a young woman or any couple begin to build their relationship based upon a season. Before you get into marriage, you learn this process of growing together and meeting into each other's life, feeding into each other's life, beginning to join each other's life together through this courtship or a betrothal approach, erusin approach. So he's going to give us the threefold erusin proposal. And then he's going to give us the 10 pillars I've talked about, on which the kingdom will come, and the household will be built, and will rest and grow to maturity and bear its best fruit. He's going to introduce us to divine speech individually. Only Moshe has heard his voice up to this point. But after Avraham and Yaakov and Yitzhak and all those guys. But since in our generation, only Moshe has heard his voice this far. It's going to change this week. This week, we're all going to hear the kol, the voice of the Holy One. Kol is the Hebrew word that we translate as voice. It's the sound, the endemic noise. It's what Adam heard in the garden. He heard the voice of the Holy One. We're going to hear that again. It's going to come out. And it's going to come out in different forms over the course of the next the rest of our lives. We're going to hear his voice come out in different forms. We hear it this week in Dibrot. Word, dabar is the root word. Dabar, a buzz like a bee makes, and a productive, impacting sound that comes forth that indicates action is going on. Dabar, the dibrot. We'll later hear it in the masculine form, devarim or devarim, some will call it. We'll see we have a whole book. The fifth book of Torah is called Devarim. This idea that he will release his voice, will come in words that have this buzz and effect that indicate that something is happening. It's not just theory. It's not just ideas. It's not just spoken words. These are action engendering words. And then he's going to give us the other forms of his voice. Specifically, mitzvot will come later. We don't get any mitzvot in this week. Mitzvot are commandments, as our Yushin call. These are where we join together, working, co-laboring with him in particular activities. These are called mitzvot. Mishpatim, the things that are the way he thinks about things, the way in which he values and sees redemptive possibilities in, or does not see those things in different things. And then Derakim, his ways. Derakim is a Hebrew word that means ways. Derek is the way, and the idea is he has ways, and he is always has a plan and a strategy, like negotiating through a desert. He will take us places, but we have to follow his ways. And then hukot, the idea that he will give us certain things that we will not understand, that we do because he is who he is to us. He is our bridegroom king. He is the one to whom we are attached. He is the rock from which we are hewn. So therefore, when he says something without thinking, we do it. Hukot. Pikudim, testimonies. We will connect to the stories of the patriarchs and the stories of the creation, the stories of the ancients. These things will guide us. These are all forms of his words. Edut, Pikudim, or actually Edut is what I was talking about with regard to the testimonies. Pikudim is when he musters us, calls us together, and we stand in position, in uniform. The things that make up our uniform, the things that make up our presentation, our rules of engagement with society, these are Pikudim. And then he'll give us mishmeret, which is specific charges for specific things in specific contexts. And then he'll give us his brit, his covenant, his connections about what the part he is to play and the part we are to play in conjunction, in connection, and co-laboring with him. And finally, he will give us his Torah, his specific fatherly mentor-like instructions. He is the master craftsman. We are the apprentices, and he will show us how to do things, teach us how to do things, tell us how to do things. That's his Torah. Well, these are all forms of his speech, divine speech, and we will be so enamored with it. This will become so much more important than anything people like Yitro, or people like Pharaoh, or people like the Amaleki, or people in general in the world. Although they may seem wise at the moment, or they may seem powerful at the moment, we will quit listening to them because they're the counsel of the ungodly. And we will listen instead to these various different factors of his voice. So the rest of Shemot we will do focus on his abiding presence and building and carrying his presence and his glory, and introducing Mishpatim, and then service, Avodah. Beloved, we have been called to a beautiful mission. We're not here by chance, and we're not here just enduring the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. We are here to experience and then learn to traffic in the richest form of love and wisdom the world has ever known. We are here to learn to experience and traffic in the richest forms of love and wisdom that the world has ever known. This is our purpose. This is our identity. But in the process of learning these things, the love, the greatest love and the greatest wisdom, we will also be confronted with and experience and have to learn to deal with and navigate around and through and overcome the heaviest, darkest levels of hatred and folly and perversion that the fallen, corrupted human beings of this world, under the influence of unclean spirits, are capable of doing. We have to learn to traffic in love and wisdom, and learn to navigate around folly, hatred, anger, obsessions of the flesh, attitudes and opinions of the pseudo-intellect, ideas of self-righteousness. We have to avoid all those things. So we're going to learn in this journey through the desert with the Holy One, our King, our Master, our Master Craftsman, whom we're learning the disciplines from. We're going to learn critical lessons of ear discipline, learning how to tune our ears to his voice in the various different components that I've talked about, and learning to tune our ears to that and keep them tuned to that particular broadcasting signal, the true sound, the true tone, and learn how to differentiate those true tone things from the messages of the world, the distortion of humanity, the distortion of fallen men and fallen women and fallen cultures and fallen ethnicities and all the things that we have to deal with. We have to learn to distinguish tone. So we're learning ear discipline and we're learning tone differentiations. Oh, the Holy One's voice, the Holy One's words, the Holy One's instruction, the Holy One's presentation of himself and his plan is true tone. It is pure, it is holy, it is beautiful, it is inspiring, it is empowering. But then there's the distortion. The distortion is man's fruit of the tree of the knowledge inspired deviations from that true tone. It's man's opinions, it's man's approaches, it's man's organizational structures, it's man's concepts and abstract theories, and man's theologies, and man's philosophies, and man's ideologies. These are the distortions from true tone. We are learning ear discipline to go back to true tone. Now, as I said earlier, the name of this week's parsha is Yitro. Jethro, it's often translated by King James English. They added the J sound after the Torah was written, and the English people began to use the J sound. And so here we have Jethro, but it's not Jethro. It's Yitro. And it comes from the Hebrew verb yatar, which means to dangle loose, to be an unbound rope or a cord, not affixed or tied to any foundation or support. Yitro is he that is dangling, unbound, a rope cord just loose, not tied to any foundational support. It's like a slender reed, as it's later said, a slender reed that offers hope, but you don't know if you can trust it or not because you don't know what it's attached to or if it's attached. It's being disconnected, out of sync, unplugged, unhinged, an unmoored vessel floating around the harbor, a ghost ship that will just appear off of the horizon and you have to avoid it. These are the issues of Yitro. Note to self. Remember, there are two kinds of wisdom in this world. They come from very different sources. There's the wisdom from above and the wisdom from the earth, which is demonic, divisive, destructive. The two different sources of wisdom provide two different ways. Know that they have very different tonal quality. The one is sweet and lovely and beautiful, and yet it cuts us to the core. That's the voice of the Holy One. That's the wisdom of heaven. But there's very different tonal quality to the words of men. There's a sense of arrogance and opinionation. There's a sense of self-promotion. There's a sense of fleshly appeal. And so these different two kinds of wisdom yield very different fruit. The fruit of the heaven's wisdom is beautiful and wonderful and life-giving. The fruit of men's wisdom, the demonic wisdom, is of course not that. It's the opposite. Last week we learned a key discipleship instruction as the Holy One desires to mentor us and take us through and train us in the desert. He gives us training protocols. One of those was, again, at Marah. And Exodus 15, verses 25 through 26, I want to kind of talk to you about what he said. He said, Im shamoa tishma lechol Adonai Elohega. If, as, and when. This is the Holy One speaking to Moshe at Marah. Im shamoa tishma lechol Adonai Elohega. If and when and as and to the extent you will diligently, systematically shema the voice of the Holy One your God. You see, we tie back to this foundation. Everything is about shemaing the voice of the Holy One, Shema Israel. If, as, when, and to the extent you diligently and systematically shema the voice of the Holy One your God, v'hayashab enav ta'aseh, and you make and cause to take shape what is right and straight and productive in His sight, the Holy One's sight. If you, and as when you do that, Zanta lemitzvotav, and if and when and as to the extent you give ear to His instructions of life. V'shemarti kol chukav aleka, if and when you do that, and as you also treasure and cherish and carefully watch over to keep all of His directives. Kol ha'mashalah machala asher samti b'mitzrayim lo asim. I will put none of the sicknesses, the diseases, the maladies on you that I brought upon the Egyptians. Ki ani Adonai rofek, because I am to you, the Holy One, your health giver, your healer, your Redeemer, your Restorer. Now that was what he said last week. He gave us some cues. There are some secrets. And in this Shabbat Drash, an inspirational covering, you have to remember all these are in context of giving us these 4 cues, 4 relational approaches, methodologies that we have to learn before we approach Sinai, before we approach the 10 words, before we approach the three kingdom functions we're supposed to perform for him that he wants us done. We need to understand the relational approaches that he's going to give us. And the first one is we need to learn to Shema, his voice. Shema, his voice. What does it mean to Shema? It's not sometimes translated as hear or listen or pay attention to, or sometimes it's translated as obey, but it's all the above and so much more. It is what happens whenever you begin to resonate in tone, in the same tone, like an instrument that plays and you tune to it and you begin to find that fine note, that pure tone in the instrument as what was played off the thing you're tuning from, and now you begin to resonate together. This is Shema. It's much more than just hear or listen or pay attention to or even obey. And obedience without tuning is manipulation and witchcraft. So here we have, what does it mean to be deeply and profoundly affected by a sound, a voice, a message, some words? To be deeply and profoundly affected by it, not just to hear it. And then begin to do something else, to begin to vibrate in resonance, in the spirit, inside, with the tone, with the demeanor, and with the substance of the message we are being deeply and profoundly affected by. This is deep training. This is spirit-to-spirit communication. To Shema means we are building a tie, a bond between us and the speaker, and we are mimicking, we are learning to approach and reproduce, to mirror what he is doing by vibrating in resonance with his frequency, his tone, the demeanor, and the substance, the message. And as we do so, this goes on, keeps going on, to therefore adjust our thoughts, what we will think about, what we will allow to come into our mind, our beliefs, what we will allow to form part of the givens of our life, our prioritization matrix. We will adjust these things to the sound, to the voice, to the demeanor, to the tone of the one who we are shemaing. We will also adjust our emotions, what emotions we will accept, what we will quelch, what we will push to the side. Well, these things are based on what we shema. And also what we will say and what we won't say. What we will allow to come out of our mouths will be based upon what we have shemaing, because we will speak what we are shemaing. If you want to hear somebody if you know someone who speaks profanity, it's because they're listening to profanity. They're immersing themselves in it, so they're speaking what they're shemaing, what they're resonating what they're vibrating with. Same thing with lewd statements or lewd comments or political opinions or ideologies or philosophies or theologies. They're just repeating things because they are associating themselves with it. But we are supposed to do that with the very words, with the very tone, with the very voice of the Creator of the universe. And so we adjust our speech, we adjust our actions, our behaviors, our reactions to other people and to circumstances and situations. We do so to implement in real time and in real ways every word or even every nonverbal cue that we have received from the Creator. This is to Shema. That's our first relational methodology approach. This is step 1, phase 1, job 1 in the kingdom, to learn to Shema his voice, and lo Shema, not pay attention to, not resonate, not vibrate with, not repeat the things of the ungodly. The second thing that he told us in Exodus 15, in that portion I read to you, is that we are to asa, we are to build, we are to make. It's not just, in English I think it says many times to do. Well, do is one thing, but to asa is to make, like a potter makes a pot. To take the raw materials, to apply focus and concentration and energy to make something that reflects what we're feeling and thinking in the actual world where people can see it. So we use the words that he speaks as a blueprint to actually make something happen in the world. And then we apply creative energy to it. And instead of applying creative energy, what will make us happy, we apply creative energy to build and put in place what he says is beautiful, what he says is to be done. And as he reveals that to us in his Torah, we do it. Instead of building what seems right in our own eyes, or through the eyes of our own flesh, or through the eyes of our own pseudo-intellect and our mental capacities, or through the eyes of our deceived culture, our deceived ethnicity, our deceived group that we associate with. We do not let the group think of whoever we hang around with or whoever we pay attention to in the natural realm change what we're building with our lives. That's the key factor. The third of the four relational approaches that lead us to the idea of the three things we're supposed to do that he wants us to do in life, and the 10 channels to get there. The third one is azan. We lend our ears. Azan is ear. And so we lend our ears to the Holy One. We surrender our ears, not to the voices of men, but to the Holy One's voice. And that becomes the one we keep tuning to and keep refining, listening for that word, listening for that voice, and learning to tune out, differentiate the tones of other voices. And then we have the fourth one is to shamar. And this shamar means to cherish and to treasure, to so highly value that we will guard with our being, with our life, with our time, with our energy. We will focus on guarding it, to highly value, to cherish, treasure, and zealously watch over, to perform. And then to guard against erosion and all his directives, all the creator of the universe's directives as to how we are to live and face real life challenges. So Parsha Yitro first introduces us to someone who will challenge us. Will we listen to the voice of a stranger? Or will we stay focused on what our beloved Creator and Shepherd King told us? Shema, Asa, Auzan, Shemar, his voice, his words, or the voice of a stranger. Well, we've had voices of a stranger before. We've had the serpent. We've had Cain. We've had Nimrod and all the things that happened at Babel. The people who wanted to build the tower and make a name for themselves. We've heard about the king of Sodom. We remember Pharaoh. We've had so many other voices. The voices of strangers speak to us. But now we're going to hear. We're going to learn to resonate with the voice of the Creator. Let's have our call to worship. It may get us a good start in this regard. If you know it, you can sing along in Hebrew. But whatever you do, take a deep breath. Stop what you're doing. And let a little focus come into you. And let the Hebrew sounds of this blessing that we sing, as like we do the Song of the Sea, and let the sounds of this blessing begin to awaken in your heart the desire to hear the voice of the Creator. Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorah. Baruch Adonai Hamvorah Leolam Vayed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. And now open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth, so do not hide your commandments from us. The final words of last week's Parsha Beshalach, Exodus 17:14 and following, gave us a warning that there's something happening in the world we need to understand. There is an ongoing tension that the Creator of the universe has set in place between forces, between mindsets. And we are the ones that are supposed to navigate this and survive in this state of tension. The state of tension will continue throughout all generations. And here's how the Holy One described it to us. Realizing as we're going to read some of these English words that the Hebrew words are so much bigger and deeper and more full and meaningful than the English translations can ever get. But here's what it says in our English Bibles from Exodus 17:14 and following. The Holy One said to Moshe, write this or inscribe this for a memorial in the Sefer, in the record, in the annals, and recount it in the hearing, in the ears of Yehoshua, Joshua as he's called in the world. Write it, inscribe it, and recount it, tell it in the hearing for the ears of Yehoshua. And here's what he's going to tell. Here's the tension state. That I will, the Holy One saying, I will, he's going to Maka Amche. I will Macha Amche. And in English, I think it says, be at war. It's, again, it doesn't. We don't know how to translate Mako Umake. It means to rub over and stroke repetitively. It's like if you understand this process. If you ever had a dog or a cat and you had to like to play with it by rubbing the hair the wrong way, rubbing his mane or fur the wrong way, it irritates the thing. But yet that's what he's doing. He's rubbing over and he's stroking repetitively in an irritating way to get a response out of Amalek. He says, I will macha or mako amche, the remembrance of Malak, his memories, Amalek's memories, Amalek's thoughts, both in you and in them. I'm creating this tension, mitachat hashemayim, under the heavens. As long as you're under the heavens, there will be this ongoing tension between you. And whenever Amalek confronts you, there will be this sense of, you're rubbing my fur the wrong way. And whenever we confront Amalek, it will be the same toward them. They were rubbing us the wrong way. This is what he was saying. And so Moshe built an altar. How did Moshe respond to that strange warning? This strange information that we need to know before we enter the world, that we're going to face Amalek and he's going to rub us the wrong way, and he's going to stir us like a grating sound against the blackboard, or we used to get when I was young. The remembrance of Amalek is going to be an unpleasant memory. One that stirs us with emotions and flesh things, as well as kicks in our defensiveness. Well, what did Moshe do? He built an altar, and he called its name Adonai Nisi. The Holy One is an uplifted one, a banner, a sign around which I will muster. The Holy One is an uplifted one, a banner, a sign around which I will rally and muster. Oh, so now that's the secret of negotiating through the Amalek tension of the world, is to understand the Holy One is our uplifted one, our banner, our sign around which we rally, muster. As opposed to reacting to the Amalek, we respond to the plan of the Holy One. Oh, this is a secret that we learned. The unsettling final words of Parsha Beshalach in 17:16 of Exodus were Milchama Lahava Ba'amalek Midor Dor. The Holy One will indeed be making war on and of and in Amalek. It won't be just of with Amalek. It'll be on, in Amalek. They will be at war. We will be at war in the midst of generation upon generation. It's not just generation after generation. It's in the midst of generation upon generation. Midor, door. Okay. So this is a threat level. We have a tension we're going to be negotiating. We have a challenge of other voices. The Amalek mindset, the Pharaoh mindset, the Nimrod mindset, the Tower of Babel mindset, the Cain, the serpent mind, all these voices will be coming at us, and we have to learn how to navigate the tension and stay focused upon the Holy One, the one high and lifted up. Warfare comes in many forms, and sometimes it comes frontally, and sometimes it comes through deception in the back door, the Helen of Troy, the Trojan horse idea. But that gets us enough to where we can get started with our Parsha and the actual revelation that's coming beyond this drash. The revelation begins with these words. Vayishma Yitro. and Yitro shma'd something. Vaishma Yitro Kohen Midian Chotan Moshe. And then Yitro, the sheik of Midian, Moshe's father-in-law, heard and picked up on and began to vibrate with, in resonance with something. What? Et kol kasher asa Elohim leMoshe. All that the Eternal One had done and made happen for Moshe. Yishma, Yitro, the Kohen of Midian, the Kohen of Moshe, he hears what the Holy One has been doing for Moshe. And Ul Israel, and for his people, Israel. Ki hotzi Adonai et Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, and how the Holy One brought Israel forth out of Mitzrayim. Vayikak Yitro Koten Moshe, and Yitro took in hand et Zipporah Eshet Moshe, Achar Silukek. Moshe's wife, Zipporah. He took in hand Moshe's wife, Zipporah, after Moshe had sent her away. And that's kind of where we start here. I want to kind of get back to that for a second. Remember where we last saw Zipporah, daughter of Yitro? We last saw her when she was going to come back to Egypt with him. And then they had this encounter and this dispute, and she throws the bloody foreskin of the youngest child at Moshe's feet, and she screams at him, saying, "You are a bridegroom of blood to me." And then he sent her back to Yitro. We haven't seen her since. And so suddenly now we have Yitro taking her. It's like it's not just he brought her. That's what we read in English. He took her. It is an intentional thing with a purpose, not just to reunite her and Moshe, but to use her in this regard. So this is what happens. He took her in hand and took her. Well, we're going to find much about Midian, and I wanted about Midian and about Yitro over the course of the rest of the studies of Torah and all up to Tanakh. We're going to find a bunch of information about Midian. We're not going to hear much more about Yitro. He's thought highly of by a lot of theologians in both the Jewish and the Christian mind. He's also thought very poorly of by the ancients of the Hebrews. But whoever, we're not here to judge Yitro. What we're here to do is learn how to interpret sounds and find out what is the voice of the Holy One, and what is true tone, and what is the wisdom that is from below, the wisdom that is demonic, the wisdom that is divisive, as opposed to that which brings shalom. Okay, who is Yitro? He is described in two ways. He is the sheik of Midian. I know it says Kohen in English. We think of that as priest, but priest means a representative or an ambassador. And it tells us who he is the ambassador of. He's not the ambassador, he's not the priest of the Holy One. Contrast that with Melchizedek in Genesis chapter 14. He was the priest of the Most High God, El Elyon. Well, who is Midian? Who is Yitro the priest of? He is the sheik of Midian. He is representing the interest of the Midianites. That is his people. That is who he sheiks for. That is who he kohens for. That is who he ambassadors for and deputizes. That's what his motive is defined by what it says here. He is sheik of Midian. And he was Kotan Moshe. The second thing is, along with being Kohen Midian, he is also Kotan Moshe, the father-in-law, but it's more than father-in-law in the way we think about it today. It's marriage contractor, the one who arranged this marriage, the one who manipulated it, arranged it. This is he's using Zipporah for his purposes in this regard. So this is Yitro. His agenda is spelled out for us. Who is he now? He has heard something. And what has he heard? And who has he been listening to? And what was his feelings about that? How was he approaching and responding to what he heard? And who has he taken? He's taken Zipporah with him for whatever purposes he may have. We're going to learn about his initial meeting with Moshe. Moshe will be swept off his feet, and so will the people of Israel. They will learn how to listen to another voice, a voice of a man, about his organizational structure, his form over substance, his introduction of sacraments into the world that the Holy One has not done yet. These things he will do, and he will give unsolicited advice Says what you're doing is not good. What the Holy One has planned and caused to happen at this mountain is not good. He doesn't know. He doesn't have a clue what's going to happen next, but he's going to have an opinion about it, as most people in this world will do. They have a lot of opinions, but they don't know a lot. And that's kind of where we're going with Yitro. And then we'll see Yitro depart. He's going to leave the camp. He's not going to be part of us. He's going to go back to where he came from. So that is the issue of Yitro. I want to move on then into the other voice, because we aren't stuck with the voice of another. We aren't stuck with the voice of a man. We are not stuck with the voice of the ungodly. We will get the voice of the Holy One. And the issue is learn to distinguish and differentiate between them. All right. So what we have is the Holy One is going to speak. The first thing he's going to do, he's going to bring us to Mount Sinai. Beginning in chapter 19 of Exodus, we begin to see where he brings us to Mount Sinai. And what does he do? First thing he does is call Moshe up to the top of the mountain alone. He wants to give a message to Moshe, a vision for who we are to be. What are the various aspects of who we are to become? And he says to Moshe at that time, as a verse I read to you earlier, he says, do you remember you saw what I did to the Egyptians and how I brought you, pick you up as on eagle's wings, and I brought you to myself. So first of all, we're here. This is for us to come to him and be with him. And the second thing he says is, now, if you will shema my voice and shamar my covenant, if you will tune and resonate with my voice. This is for all the people of Israel, all the people of the nations who have come forth with Israel as the mixed multitude to this place. If you will, if as when and to the extent you will tune your voice, you will shema my voice. Tune your ears, tune your hearing, tune your hearts, tune your will to the voice of the Holy One and what he has to say. And if you will shamar, treasure, cherish, and carefully guard the covenant that he's going to make with us, which says what he will do and what we are to do in response to what he does, in conjunction with what he's doing, if we will do these things, what will happen? He says, you will be to me a special treasured people. An segilah in Hebrew is such a beautiful phrase. We are to be a treasure. There is a treasure that is to be in us, walking in us. We are to have this treasure in earthen vessels. We are to be his treasure. It's not the treasure of any human thing. It's a treasure of heaven. Do not set your treasure on earth, where the thief can break in and steal and corrupt. This is the things of heaven, that we will carry his treasure, and we will therefore become his treasure. As his treasure bearers, we become his special treasure among the nations. Because he says, all the nations are mine. All the earth is mine. That's the idea. We are designed to carry his treasure into all the world, to all the peoples, to all the nations, to carry this special treasure and to project the special treasure status in a step one of three things we're to be. Segula. If, as, when, and to the extent we shema his voice, tune to him and untune, detune from whoever else we've been listening to, and we shamar his covenant and begin to carefully guard and watch over it and treasure it and cherish it. Then we will become this Segula, but that's not all. And you will become my mamlachet kohanim. You will become ambassadors of me, not ambassadors of America, not as ambassadors of Philippines, not as ambassadors of New Zealand or Australia or South Africa or Israel, not ambassadors of some other earthly entity, or not ambassadors of some philosophy or some religion. You will be ambassadors of me. You will be mamlachet hakohanim, kingdom of ambassadors, royal ambassadors that represent me in the world. This is phase two. Phase one is to be his special treasure, carriers of the special treasure of heaven into all the earth. The second one is to be his kingdom of priests, his kingdom of royal ambassadors who represent him and him alone, not religion, not any form of religion, not any substance of religion, who represent him and his heart and his will and his voice with all our heart and with all our soul. And the third thing, the three kingdom assignments that he's brought us to Sinai to give us. He tells Moshe, these are the third. The third one is going to be, you will be a goy kadosh. In English, we translate it as holy nation. But it is, a goy kadosh means a group of people who is flowing with the energy of the kedusha of heaven. the things that make the four living creatures sing, holy, 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 that make the elders, the 24 elders, fall on their face and cast their crowns, the things that makes the angels sing their songs, worthy, worthy is the Lamb. These are the things this is the Kedusha energy. We will be vessels of that. We will be a people that are vessels of that energy, that empowerment, that inspiration that is different from just ways and thoughts of men. So that is who we're called to be. Those are the three things that he's given to us. The Holy One is speaking to us. And so then we find out that to build out, to give us a way to step into the role of these three kingdom functions that we're to call. And what an awesome calling it is. What an awesome identity we are given to have and to carry. What an awesome message we have for the world. And what a message of tikkun olam, of healing and restoration and redemption that we can bring to the world through these three empowerments. But he's going to give us 10 channels. That's learning how to do that. And so he tells us in Exodus 19, beginning with verse 17, Moshe brought the people out of the camp to meet with, to experience in hearing and in sense the God that they had heard had brought them out of Egypt. And they stood waiting to serve at the foot of the mountain. And Mount Sinai was completely engulfed in smoke because the Holy One descended upon it. He broke the finity barrier. He arranged this mountain to be our chuppah, where he would betroth himself to us and us to him. And he descended. He made his entrance. And he descended upon it in fire. Its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace. And the whole mountain quaked greatly. And when the sound of the shofar, there's this sound of the ram's horn that came out of heaven. The sound of the shofar sounded long. It became louder and louder. This, we're learning the voice. We're learning the sound. When this happened, it became louder and louder. The shofar continued to sound. Moshe spoke, and the Holy One answered and responded to his voice. And they began this picture of us, him speaking, us responding, him responding, us responding. This was the picture. And then it says the Holy One came down upon Mount Sinai. He descended in our midst, on the top of it and in the shaking of the mountain. And the Holy One called Moshe to the top, and he said, go down and warn the people, lest they step out of their role, out of their place, out of their lane. And don't let them breach the boundaries in a hunger just to gaze at me. This is about so much more than that. Many will perish if you do that. Well, the Holy One has spoke these beautiful things, gave us this very wonderful opportunity, and then he began to speak. What were the 10 of the words? He says, I am the Holy One, your God, who brought you forth, yatsad you, caused you to spring forth or sprout like a seed out of the dirt of Egypt. I brought, and the word you there is not the plural that we would get, you guys in California, or y'all from Texas, the plural form of you. This is a singular form of you. He's speaking, and he spoke in the hearing of every human being who was there, who was both of Bnei Israel and of the mixed multitude who heard this. And he spoke, and he says, I brought you out of the dirt of Egypt, and I caused you to sprout. I brought life into you and caused you to become alive in me, and I brought you out of the house of bondage. This is what he says to you, to each of us, our foundation, before we get into all the other channels of direction, of activity and focus that we're going to have. He wants this to be the key factor. We are his. He brought us out. He gave us life. He is the source of everything that we do. So he says that first. And then I'm going to, let's see if I can find where we go here, because I want to get those, the next of the 9 things that he says are amazing to us. And he's going to tell us that you will have, and these things, how we're going to look at the things he's going to tell us. Because we know them as the 10 Commandments, but if you've learned around much religion in your life, or much politics in your life, you know they get called as the 10 Commandments. But let me tell you that you have to consider who it is speaking and what he's designing and what the context and what the part of the plan is he's doing. He is instead empowering us. These are prophetic empowerments and inspirations. You can consider them commandments if you wish, but the commandments come later. The commandments build upon this and help us to make our way into these 10 channels and stay on focus. They keep us from wandering loose and being loose cords, not bound to anything. So these 10 words are prophetic empowerment. The first thing he says is, you will have no other gods before me. You will have no other Elohim. You will have no other sovereigns. No one else will rule your life. No one else. This is a promise, and it's a prophetic empowerment to learn we can be free of all the other, and not just gods of the nations, the things the Egyptians believed in or the Canaanites believed in, of anything that has a power, control power over us that we think we're controlled by. We can be free of it. Only one. Who is our one? Who is our Echad? Our Echad is the Holy One who brought us out. You will have no other gods before my face, he said, before my Al-Paneh. You will not let anything get between my gaze and yours. As we look into one another's eyes, the Holy One speaking to mankind, every single one of us. As the Holy One says, as I gaze upon you and you try to gaze back at me, you will not let anything come between us and distract you. No form, no sacrament, no organization structure, no institution, no society, no ethnicity, no culture. Nothing will stand between you and me. This is the plan. This is the first of the 10 channels. It was actually the second. The first one is to know who he is. We are to guide ourselves toward him and not to be distracted by anything the world has to offer to us. And the next thing says, and you will make of no carved image, no graved or carved image. You have been given creativity. This is second or third function of who we are and how we get into the idea of being his special treasure people, carriers of his special treasure and models of it. How we get into being his representatives in the earth. How we get into being his channels of Kedusha from heaven that come into our beings and flow back out. How we get to be that. The third thing is we will learn how to channel our creativity. He will teach us how to channel our creativity away from the things that men of the earth are creative about. How they like to design things and draw things and sing things and write things and all this make up stuff and tell stories. This is all part of learning to channel our creativity back towards him. Well, he goes on. He's going to keep on going. There are a total of 10 of these great statements of declarations of who we are. And these 10 things are going to be the foundation out of which all of the mitzvot, all the mishpatim, all the hukim, all the other types of words of the whole Torah of the Holy One comes. This is the Sinaitic covenant. We are to do for him something corresponding to what he has done for us. We are to become his representatives in the earth. Well, that's our discussion for today. As I've said earlier, this is just an introduction to awaken your heart on the Sabbath. If you want to get more details and you want to look at these things specifically, I encourage you to go to the website, biblicallifestylecenter.org, to the Rabbi's Son page and to the archived studies section. Shabbat Shalom. Let us know where you are, who's listening, and any comments, questions, prayer requests you might have. Blessings to you, Lord. Blessings to you, Lord, but also blessings to you people who are listening. Shabbat Shalom. See you next time.